evening and welcome to the August 24th, 2021 Gilderland Central School District Board of Education meeting. Would you all please silence your cell phones and rise for the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so tonight is our goal setting meeting and we have some business to attend to after. So first, just so everybody knows, there's a little bit of a change with how we run our goal setting meeting. First I have a small announcement, then we'll go over our goal setting, which is on the agenda, and then we'll go to public comment. And before public comment, I'll remind everybody for public comment the policies that we follow. So first, just an announcement that we had a board member resign yesterday. Ben Goes resigned yesterday, and so we have an opening position on the board. And we have two options that we can follow to fill that open seat. And I'm just going to read them so everybody knows. We have two options. One is to hold a special election within 90 days of the vacancy. If this is the option, the person selected takes the remainder of the full term of the vacancy, or we can appoint a person to fill the vacancy. And again, this person only sits until the regularly scheduled election, which would be May of 2022. So I've done this a few times now. I've always been involved in the appointing a person, which of course doesn't cost money like an election. I don't know if anybody has thoughts on this. This is a public discussion, so we don't have to decide tonight, but maybe if you want to kind of give me your first initial thoughts since we just found out.
The appointing is like last time where we would have anybody who's interested take a shot at it and come and you interview them, correct?
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, and anybody else has been here, we put a call out for whoever is interested, and I think they turn into materials, so it's not signatures like an election, but to show that they're interested. And then we have kind of like a meet the candidate night, and we have like a set of questions. At least that's the process that I've been involved with. And Judy?
And I think that has worked well. I think the last time we had many candidates, 5 or 6, I don't remember exactly, but we had a good chance to hear everybody speak, and we made our decision, and it seems to work well enough when we have the elections in the spring, so I'm in favor of the appointment. Yes. After an interview session before. Go ahead, Gloria.
I also think the process worked well because we brought in some people, and just going through the interview process, they became interested. They actually ran on the next May, so
Yes, that is true.
yeah, Rebecca.
Right, Rebecca. People
And
be
then-
interested. And I think one
and then
too.
it was also.
Yeah,
And Ben also came on that way.
Any other comments or questions about this? I don't think we need to decide tonight, and I just want to clarify, Neil. So the special election had to be within 90 days, but the appointing, does that also follow within that, or do we have flexibility?
I think you have flexibility on that.
Okay. So I don't think, oh, go ahead, Rebecca.
I just think the cost saving of not having an election is really compelling.
Anybody else?
I also wouldn't want to hold it up. It seems like a good time for someone to start before we get too far into the school year.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And in some ways, at least what I've seen in the past, it's kind of a nice way people, you don't have to get signatures, and you come on and you just fulfill the spot until May, and so you kind of get a feeling of what the board's like, and then you can decide if you want to run or not in the next election. But I propose that we don't need to make a decision tonight on what we're going to do, since we just found out and we just clarified what our options are. And it sounds like we have some time, even if we did want to do the election within 90 days. So I don't think we need to decide tonight, is what I'm saying. Sound okay?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is our goal setting. Just 1 minute here. All right, so I think this document I think is posted publicly, and I've probably emailed you guys several times now about this. Just to clarify it, because we've had some questions from people in the community. The goals that are listed in the SMART goals table, and I think there's 4 of them that are listed, there's 4 main goals that are listed like that. This was all from September, this was actually started even before September 2020. This was discussed and then finally put into a kind of a format of the SMART table, or SMART goals, sorry, in September 23. And then underneath each table, you can see that there's a follow-up discussion that was in May of 2021. Was it 2021? Yep,
Yes.
May 3rd meeting. So tonight is really just a follow-up and kind of a check-in to see where we are with our goals and see if we're on the right track and do we need to make any adjustments. And so I'm just going to go down the table to see what everybody thinks about in terms of the goals that we established and where we are in terms of progress. So I'll start with the first one that talks about close achievement or opportunity gap. So the 2 main goals that we talked about here were first to increase student achievement and engagement at the state and local level for all student groups, and to initiate conversation and professional development surrounding alternative assessment models. The last meeting, someone brought up they're concerned about the dropping in rankings, and so that we made a note of that. We did, I think, talk a lot about, because of COVID, holding off on things like rankings and just even alternative assessments, because everything's in a state of flux with COVID and curriculum being somewhat different. Does anyone have thoughts about this first goal in terms of closing the achievement opportunity gap?
I think one of the things we need to begin to do, and we can do it, even though we're still in this pandemic, is to begin to gather some data around the courses that, we have a list of the types of data we can do. And now that we're coming back to in-person learning, we should be able to bring that data together. I know the DEI committee will, the one committee, the audit committee, that's the audit one, we will be looking at that and gathering that data. So I think that's going to be a big piece of the work this year.
I also remember, so within this goal, we talked about the social emotional learning of students. So this was a goal established before COVID. And then once COVID hit, this became prioritized even more. And we know that like a lot of the COVID funds could be used for that. And so I don't know if Dr. Wells, if you want to give a little bit of an update of what this district has been planning in terms of social emotional learning.
So I'm happy to. We have had for well over a year an active shared decision-making like teams focusing on social emotional learning. It included parents, teachers, administrators, service providers from the community, Northern Rivers, so partners we actually work with to support students' social emotional well-being. And over the course of their work time together, they were looking at a variety of research-based approaches to thinking through the social and emotional well-being of our students, particularly when they return to school this coming fall. And after doing a lot of research, they landed on the work of a program called the Positivity Program. So I think what it might be easiest for me to do is just give you a brief synopsis of what the Positivity Program is. So what is the Positivity Project? It is dedicated to empowering America's youth to build positive relationships by recognizing the character traits in themselves and others. And the vision is to help schools and families cultivate citizens and leaders who enhance our communities and our country. It's based in positive psychology and is scientifically validated. It focuses on 24 character strengths that are its foundation. And it teaches that people have all 24 strengths in them, and that the character is not just a skill or a behavior, but rather an intrinsic part of each of us. And just so you are aware, some of those character strengths and definitions include, there's 24 of them, appreciation of beauty and excellence, bravery, connection and purpose, creativity, curiosity, fairness, forgiveness, gratitude, hope, humility, humor, integrity, kindness, leadership, love of learning, open-mindedness, perspective, perseverance, prudence, self-control, social intelligence, teamwork and citizenship, and zest and enthusiasm. So over the course of this school year, each week of the year we'll have one of these 24 character topics, and our teachers will lead very brief 15-minute lessons with all of our students, and this will be K through 8, on those topics. And it'll be woven through the day to help our students focus on those kinds of character traits that they develop. And they're lined up around the school year in ways that make sense. So for example, love is in February around Valentine's Day, and you get kind of the idea of gratitude around Thanksgiving time. So it's a very structured program, so it's possible for us to make sure that it is kind of uniformly implemented across our K-8 buildings. And our 9-12 students will also get the start of it. It's going to take a little bit longer to implement in the high school. We're weaving it into our Sources of Strength program. And the training for that will happen on one of our opening days, Superintendent Conference Days at the beginning of school. We have many teachers involved in being turnkey trainers and a lot of excitement around this project. So we're happy about it. There's a self-assessment. Actually, all of our administrators are doing the very same self-assessment for our meeting on Thursday. And our students will be doing it too, to help them pinpoint what are their strengths, what are their less than strengths rather than weaknesses, and so how do we help students develop those kinds of traits that help them through the non-academic parts of life. So that's what we're working on in that particular subcommittee.
I mean, I'm thinking about these goals are long-term. We've talked about them not being done in a year, but because we're still in this pandemic and thinking about social emotional learning being a priority, is there a way that we can also, because this is K-8, and you said if there's, I don't know if there's plans or if there's this, like a discussion of getting like a pulse of how students are feeling when they come back to school, about just how they're feeling in general about being back in school, so we can kind of meet them where they're at versus having expectations that we don't really know what they're feeling.
I think the short answer is yes. We can absolutely, maybe around October or November-ish, once we're back in school and we have a sense of how things are going, we could have Lisa Knowles from our PPS department and some of her team come and talk about those very things. What are we seeing in our classrooms, in our school buildings, across the district as students are readjusting to being back in school all day, every day, which is something that we're really happy is happening and very much needed.
I don't know about you guys, I've heard from like a lot of parents who, especially kids who are probably 8th grade or 7th and up, probably the ones who've not been in school every day last year, just feeling a lot of anxiety. And I think that was probably an issue before COVID and maybe even worse now. So I think the other parts of this goal are something we can hold off on. That's just my opinion, but I'll open it up to everybody else.
I'm curious if there's any way, and I don't know if there is a way to measure this, but learning loss, and I know we don't huge fans of that term, but how much of a deficit kids are going into at the start of this academic year? If we could get any objective data about that.
So at our elementary levels, we do benchmark assessments, and that will be probably our best tool for doing that. We're very comfortable doing those assessments. We have very good inter-rater reliability as we do that. At the high school, we have a training going on right now that is helping, we had a team of teachers developing some professional development and some goals to help their colleagues learn how to assess just that very thing at the start of a unit. Like, where are our students? Are there gaps we need to fill? And then how do we best do that, either by differentiating in instruction or thinking about how we prioritize the curriculum differently. So every high school teacher is actually participating in that training. They either have done it over the summer or we have a full day set aside on September 8th for our high school teachers. So all have that opportunity. The middle school is going to be a little bit of a mixed bag because we have students at kind of different levels where we don't have just benchmark assessments for them. So I have to come back and see exactly what the middle school is doing in that regard. But it is on our mind for sure.
All right, one more. No, go ahead.
Just to your point, Seema, I mean, I agree with you completely. I think we're going to see, you know, a lot of anxiety problems pop up in the first few months. I know in our, I think it was our last meeting or maybe 2 meetings ago, we talked about the new homework policy and whether or not we could sort of emphasize allowing kids to have increased time outside of school that's not devoted to sort of assignments and homework in an effort to, you know, promote social emotional health.
Yeah, I mean, I think we try to catch that in the policy, just, you know, there's the assessment policy, and I think we need to make sure that we're actually pushing that idea that we've made some changes to it to allow for some flexibility to get away from the traditional model, and, you know, and it's words until we say, you know, we're trying to promote it. So I think we need to highlight for teachers at all levels that, you know, look, we have now created this kind of avenue for you to explore and to try to promote, you know, try to encourage that to happen. Especially now. Now's the time. It's you know, we're kind of at a blank slate with all this stuff, so why don't we take that opportunity?
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say part of my opening day message will be focused on that very thing. I didn't think about mentioning the homework policy per se, but I still have a week and a half to get this all written. So, I mean, the idea is, what are our priorities as we come back to school after what everyone went through last year? And priority number one has to be the health and safety of everybody in the building. So obviously we're focusing on that as much as we possibly can. But number two is the social and emotional well-being of our kids and our adults, for that matter. And so that sometimes means taking the foot off the gas pedal of the covering content conversation and the, you know, how many you know, homework assignments can we do and how much can we quote unquote cover at the expense of causing students a lot of anxiety. That's a harder conversation, you know, for, you know, when you even think about that first goal on our, well, we're not number one anymore. There's some trade-offs there in terms of the constant worry about covering a lot of content in order to get a test score versus being a student who is well-rounded, has many of these character traits, and certainly is a curious and engaged learner, which is, I think, where we want to be, and not necessarily what the business review is measuring, if I can be frank about that. So that was part of my message. The principals have asked that I reinforce that, and they'll do the same in their building level meetings.
So in our May meeting, I had written a note here that said this is insufficient data this year to inform us going forward. Let's start fresh with this goal in fall of 2021. This was in May, and I think we're all feeling a bit more positive about we're not going to be in this place in the fall. But now we're at the fall of 2021. I personally think we're kind of in the same place. So I don't know if looking at the academic piece, like we don't know how state assessments are going to, like we don't know anything about any of that stuff yet. And looking at ESSA data, to me, this would be kind of a waste of time at this point. I think we can do another checkpoint again in halfway during the school year and see where we are with the pandemic and with school. All right, so we'll move on to the next goal, which is focus on the whole child. This again talks about the social emotional health of all students, and we talked about this should be at number one on our agenda this fall, which looks like it will be. Collecting data from the summer and the fall, the social and emotional subcommittee. Dr. Wiles just gave an update about that. Currently, it looks like there was 40 students in the mental health clinic in the, this is at Farnsworth, correct? Dr. Wiles, and so this will probably be at max capacity, I'm assuming.
That was from May of the last time we did the count, so that may change when we get into the fall.
Okay.
That is close to max. That is max, yes.
Does anybody else have comments about this one, or do you think we can move on? this is really focusing on mental health, which kind of took over the first one.
Yeah, this is the most important thing this year is my comment, that we have to look at this. Marie, do we have, I don't remember from this spring, do we have more counselors at the middle school, or is the clinic still there?
Clinic is still there.
Okay.
They did a lot of their service remotely last year.
Right.
We'll have a blend, I'm sure, this year because we have our students back in campus. But we still only have one provider through the mental health clinic. The rules changed from Clinic 1 to when we had hoped to do Clinic 2 at the high school. And then with everything going on.
Okay. I just wasn't sure where we landed after.
So we don't have a clinic at the high school?
No, we just have the one at the middle school. And prior to all of this, we would actually transport students from across the district to the middle school for their treatment in order to make that possible. It was a district-wide clinic.
I mean, this is one of the fewer districts though, right, that has like an on-site clinic.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that would be great if we eventually have one at the high school too.
Well, I mean, I'm just thinking, I mean, the area is the biggest transition with high school kids that were hybrid. All the kids are hybrid. All of them coming back full-time. A lot of them that were fully remote. I mean, my concern more is high school. I mean, not that I think we should end it, but I just, wish there was a way. I understand there isn't, but I wish there was.
Any other comments about the second one?
Well, is there a way, can we use any of the FEMA funding or anything? I don't know. Trying out ideas.
Public funding?
We're gonna be learning stuff as we go through this year. And things are gonna come up that we either are not prepared for. So I think we have to be ready to be flexible with the needs that may be uncovered as we move through the years.
Yeah, I know that we talked about that when we were talking about using the federal funds.
Right.
Having services, I had mentioned having, get them contracted as early as we can. I know that's, because, I mean, I just foresee it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough for a lot. I mean, all those kids are coming back.
I mean, I think it would be a huge lift now to
No,
start it, but I agree that it would be great to have a high school clinic as well. All right, so do we need to continue this one, or can we move on to the third goal? Okay, so we'll go on to goal number 3, which focuses on diversity. We wrote down the district will support collaborative partnerships that foster learning, communication, understanding, and a positive culture in our schools and community, and then create a standing committee with 3 or 4 board members asking for letters of interest. We met a goal. So in the May meeting, we said we've made good progress in the area. The DEI committee is established and up and running. We all know, I think, that there's a lot of people interested in being on the committee, so there's a lot of support. And we also were so fortunate to hire tonight, right, we'll vote on the full-time DEI director, which will be a new position for the district. And so I think this goal was something I'm a little surprised that we were able to make a lot of motion on during COVID, but I don't know, I think it's somewhat tied with the social emotional learning, so maybe I shouldn't be that surprised. Other thoughts on this?
I don't think we need to close out the goal completely. I think we can just change it, like start working with our DEI director to focus that effort and have him work with the committee or kind of develop goals as best we can. So it's not like check completely done. Now it's, we have our baseline, now what do we do with it moving forward? So.
I mean, we've held off on some of the policies that we were looking at because we were waiting for the DEI director to be hired. And, this is an opportunity to utilize that new position to develop and refine our policies to meet these goals.
Mm-hmm. Now we've got a good structure in place, and now we can do some of the work we've talked about.
I know some of the committee work, so Gloria, Kelly, Barb, and Ben was on the committee also, so there was a lot of discussion of doing work up to a certain point, but until that person fills that role, we couldn't really move forward, or they needed to at least be looped in. So I can just make a note here, really basically getting that position connected with all the other networks that we've established already. I think we've also talked about a lot of student-led work. A lot of students are doing this work already, So being in tune to what the students are doing and let them kind of lead. Okay. I'll move on to the last one unless anyone has questions. Okay, and then number 4 was facilities. We had maintain and support technology, including cybersecurity, and then develop a more future-ready facilities vision. And in here, we talked in May about having a clear vision for facilities of the district. We did talk about going to do some visitations at other schools and getting community support and buy-in. We all heard a lot from many community members about turf field, and I think the facilities committee that was involved in that went, right, you were part of that, went to do some field trips to see
Yes,
how
we
the turf fields look at other schools. So we also met this goal, assuming, we know it's on the October capital project and that will be voted on. And so that's a separate issue, I think, from the bigger goal of what do the facilities of Dillon Central School District, what will it look like, or what do we want it to look like in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Any comments?
Well, I think what we have to begin to do is to narrow down which areas we want to work on. And I think by visiting places would be a good way of putting some vision, ideas in our head, so that along with the district office, you can begin to create that vision of what it's going to look like when you walk in a classroom down the road 10 years, 8 years from now. And then once you have that vision, then you can kind of map out how we get to there.
I also think the COVID funds impacted this too, because we're going to have some outdoor learning spaces with that money, so that impacts, I think, overall facilities of the district. And correct me if I'm wrong, some of that money also went towards like HVAC or maybe some other air filtration systems that are in the facility, in the projects. So this is going to be voted on October, and so that I think will impact this vision as well, assuming not that it passes.
It's a huge technical.
It's a huge what?
It's a huge technical.
That's correct, yeah.
I feel like we need I'm going to channel Ben here, sorry, but I feel the same way. But we have to have like a vision for what we want, it to look like. I don't think we have that vision, really. I think we're always behind the power wall here of like, we got to fix the sewage, and the chairs, and the toilets. That's what you're using capital projects for, to do basic maintenance. I don't know how to fix that, but maybe the committee that we have going could evolve into a future facilities committee. They seem to kind of understand the concepts a little bit more of what would need to be done, and then pick things off of that list rather than, I don't know. Our capital projects seem to be small and more often. We're just fixing things that should have been fixed, so just keeping it going. So it's challenging to really have a vision for something when there is no money. So I don't know how to fix that, but
Well, does the facilities
start.
Does the facilities committee, Dr. Wells, do they meet regularly, or is it really based on like this capital project or other agencies?
They're created project specific. I mean, I think the short term here is to get community support for what is an ambitious project that the board approved a couple weeks ago at $21 million. There's a lot in there that will address the kind of the integrity of our buildings question. But I do think there's a time, and maybe shortly after we get all of that kind of squared away, that we should have a conversation that begins with not facilities, but with learning. Like, what do we want learning to look like in the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? And then design backwards to the facilities. So that's really about, that really comes from this goal setting piece or a strategic planning piece. And I really think that's the next step for the district. Once we take care of the most pressing of our infrastructure or building integrity needs, our air quality needs, that's really the next step. But it begins, in my mind, with the teaching and learning environment we want to create.
But that's really, in effect, how we moved in the area of technology, because the learning, we needed the tools to complete the kind of learning that was being demanded. So that kind of pushed us ahead.
Well, I think since I've been here, strategic plan has been like a roller coaster. Like, we're having a strategic plan, we're not doing a strategic plan, but at least we're doing goals, which is good. And I think this continuous goal checking in will probably help, maybe, put together a strategic plan in the near future. But I agree, Dr. Wiles, that the short term would be getting this capital project going in October. It gets passed, and then maybe looking out to see, putting together, like you said, Kelly, like a future facilities committee and thinking about, what's happening in learning, teaching learning first, and then go from there. Because all of this aligns with the budget. Like, we can't just like randomly pick things to go into the budget unless they align to what we want the district to look like. So it was inevitable. Strategic plan is coming.
Perhaps it should be a goal.
Yeah. I mean, I can write it down.
So, since I'm new, is this actually a small capital project? Because it feels big to me.
Well, the other one was 30-some-odd million.
In the bigger scheme of things, the projects in this area, 20 million is not a big project at all.
Huh. Okay.
You'll routinely see $100 million projects. Or bigger.
Really?
If you don't do them every 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
What was it recently? They said that more people are coming to, my friend was talking about more people coming to Guilderland from the hill towns or whatever, increasing the population. You never know, if it expands, it may people building new schools and things like that, and that's a huge amount of a project right there. I don't know what the population will look like in 10 years. Who knows? Big capital projects.
I was going to say, so those are big things to add in our notes in terms of, we have the short-term capital project, the big term, looking at long-term planning in terms of facilities, and then I put maybe strategic plan question mark. So we can come back to this document. I don't really have anything else to add unless I'll just open it up one more time before we move on in the agenda. Okay, so we'll move on to the next part of the agenda, which is public comment. And just a reminder that we have public comment in person. If you're speaking at the mic, to please say your name before you say your public comment. Also, to adhere to our policy, we have a 3-minute max to use for public comment, and regular policy, we don't tend to respond. Public comment, we're listening. And all of the public comments will be posted in full on the district website. But I think we'll start with public comments who are in person first, and then I have several public comments that have been emailed. So, and we're going to try to stick to our 30-minute policy, and we can decide after if we want to extend that or not. But I'll start with public comment number 1. This is from Mike Koralchuk, and this is about the GES 5th grade instructional model. Linda, do you have the timer? Thank you. Yeah, you can go ahead.
My name is Michael Horalchuk. I'm a parent of 4 children in the district, including 1 entering 5th grade at Guilderland Elementary. This year, the 5th grade at GES and only GES will change from a single teacher classroom to a departmental model where students have a different teacher for each subject. Now each 5th grade teacher will have a shared duty to manage 90 kids instead of personal responsibility for 23. Some of us experienced the negative side of this model when it was forced on us by COVID last year. Some children were not seen as a priority by any one teacher and as a result fell through the cracks, receiving little or no individualized attention and forming no strong connections with any teacher. We have no desire to repeat this. I emphasize that my concern is with the classroom model, not the 5th grade teachers themselves, some of whom I know and respect greatly. But most disappointing is the covert way the decision was made. There was no notice to parents or opportunity for public comment beforehand, and what's more, the change was made without the knowledge or approval of either the district administration or this board. I realize there are differences of opinion about using a departmental model at the elementary level, but that's all the more reason it should have been the subject of public discussion. Instead, it was revealed without explanation a few weeks ago when parents receive their children's classroom assignments. Quite a surprise in light of the district's public statements about plans and priorities for the upcoming year. In a belated letter, the GES principal defended the change in part by arguing it is preparation for middle school. I reject this explanation. First, the middle school already prepares kids for the team model by easing them into it in 6th grade with only 2 teachers for the 4 core subjects, consistent with best practices. The GES 5th graders this year will have 4 separate teachers, only to revert back to 2 next year in 6th grade. That's not a sensible way to design the transition. Second, we've seen no evidence that the 5th graders are not prepared to enter middle school's team model, and there's certainly no reason to believe that GES students have any greater need for preparation than the students at the district's other elementary schools. We've also been told that the change is a result of the positive experience the GES 5th grade teachers had using a departmental model last year. But this evaluation wasn't based on any systematic feedback from parents, and parent reaction to last year's approach was far from uniformly positive. Maybe the GES 5th grade had a good experience, but the fact that parents of students in some other classes saw decidedly less positive results should have been reason for caution before charging forward without input. What's more, to date, the GES lower grades, who will presumably be advancing into this model in the coming years, have still received no notice about the change. I'm here to ask for accountability. After learning about this, we immediately expressed our concerns, first to the GES principal and then to the superintendent, who was initially surprised to learn about the unapproved implementation of changes that are at odds with the district's instructional model. It's clear, however, that the district's position is that by the time the decision was made public, it was already too late to change without disrupting the start of the school year. It's clear that this change was made without proper planning, public input, or formal support. In the past, the district and this board have spent considerable time and energy evaluating and debating curricular and instructional issues far less consequential than the one just made behind our backs. There's an effort now underway to retroactively characterize this change as a pilot program. Let me be blunt. This is a fiction created after the fact in an attempt to paper over the improper way this was done, and it's an insult to anyone who cares about accountability. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hirota. Next, we have Ashley Tenney.
Hello. I apologize if I'm repeating from last meeting, but I just wanted to make my voice heard on this. Good evening. My name is Ashley Tenney. I've been living in the town of Guilderland for 34 years, and I am a Guilderland alumni, class 2005. I wanted to share my experience of this past school year. My son attends Elkmont Elementary School. In the fall of 2020, he was going to be entering 1st grade, and we were debating on what to do. I wanted to mention that my parents live with me, and they are 74 years old. So not only did I have to worry about my son's health, but theirs as well, because they were higher risk. Some questions we asked ourselves then was, what about COVID? Should we continue going remote? Should we let him go back to school? Would he be okay going back to school with a mask? And was he wearing a mask going to be hard for him to learn? In the end, we decided to take the chance and let him attend school as he does better in a school environment. We didn't let him ride the bus as it was safer to drive him. The first week back, everything seemed to be going well. On September 18th, I got an email informing there was a positive COVID case at Elkmont. Shocked but not too worried, I didn't think much of it until I got a call from the health department. There was a student in my son's class that tested positive. I was very overwhelmed, and I did not know what this meant. I was told he was going to be informed he was going to be quarantined for 14 days. He could only stay in his room and use his bathroom. How do you tell a 6-year-old that he has to be confined to his room? I'll tell you how it went. He burst out crying because he did something wrong. I explained he did everything right and this was for his safety. He wasn't at fault. What made it worse was the COVID test he had to take. It was a traumatic experience that no child should ever go through. In the end, because he was wearing a mask, social distancing, washing his hands frequently, and no one else in his class got COVID, nor for the rest of the school year. I strongly believe wearing a mask was the main reason my son didn't catch COVID. Now we're coming to a new school year. What has changed? We have a vaccine now, but unfortunately it's only good for ages 12 and up. We have a Delta variant that is affecting certain people. I worried again how the district was going to handle this new year. After reading the report, I support the district's decision to keep masks in school regardless of vaccine status. I know it may upset some parents, and I feel like a choice being taken away from them. I may have felt that way too, thinking nothing could happen to my family, but after dealing with COVID scare and what my son had to go through, I'm glad masks are still required. I would like to add, masks did not interfere with his ability to learn. In fact, he thrived and socially well as well. My son has even expressed to me wearing a mask makes him feel safer while at school. I know this shouldn't be the new norm, but I'd rather my son wear a mask than end up unvaccinated. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tennant. Next, we have Jamie Sentinel. I'm just going to apologize now if I say anyone's name wrong.
Good evening, my name is Jamie Santinello. I would like to read a few sentences from an email sent by the district last June regarding the COVID-19 vaccine. FMS respects that getting the COVID-19 vaccine is a personal decision. It is not our role to interfere or influence that choice. As a district, we recognize it is strictly a parent's decision whether to vaccinate their children against COVID-19. Now I would like to read the definition of coercion. Coercion, the practice of persuading someone to do something by using force or threats. Board members, Dr. Wilds, which is it? Do you stand by a parent's right, an individual's right, to make their own personal medical decisions? Or was that just fluff to cover up the district's mistake when a video influencing children to get vaccinated was aired at school? By enforcing the CDC's guidance that students who participate in school sports either be fully vaccinated or subjected to weekly testing, you members of the board and Dr. Wilds are forcing and threatening our children. You are backing them into a corner and requiring them to make a decision that could affect them for the rest of their lives. You are threatening to take away something these kids love to do. These are just children. They want to be social, get fresh air, and enjoy physical activity. Things you would have once valued as important and healthy measures in raising successful and thriving children. Instead of allowing them to have this tiny glimmer of normalcy, you are souring the taste by enforcing these drastic measures. Weekly testing as an alternative to vaccination is not an alternative. It supports segregation and division between students. It is not even scientifically sound, as we know vaccinated individuals are just as susceptible to the Delta variant and carry approximately the same viral load as unvaccinated. Additionally, we do not know the long-term effects of weekly testing. The COVID-19 tests previously used by the district are authorized for emergency use by the FDA. Per this authorization, the test should be used for individuals suspected of COVID-19. Additionally, the fact sheet states that the test can produce false positives. Subjecting healthy individuals to weekly testing is illogical and unreasonable. Health screenings, temperature checks, along with common sense, can be used safely when determining whether or not an individual is sick. In fact, it was safely and successfully used for an entire school year within this district. Board, Dr. Wilds, end the madness. Allow our children to be children. Allow our children to make their own medical decisions instead of being bullied into one. Do what you have been elected to do to act in the best interest of all individuals within our district. Thank you.
All right, next we have Suzanne Cifarelli.
Good evening, my name is Suzanne Cifarelli. I wanted to make a comment tonight because, like so many other people, I was shocked and dismayed at some of the behavior I witnessed at the last Board of Education meeting. I support wearing masks in school, but I wanted to hear from the parents who do not. I was willing to listen to a different point of view. I wanted to understand where they were coming from. But the meeting devolved into name-calling, threats, and shouting. So any arguments those parents had was drowned out by the noise. I am horrified that my daughter may be exposed to some of these people as she moves through her school career. I think there's a very important point about mask wearing that's being missed. Wearing a mask is not meant to protect you from disease. Wearing a mask is meant to protect other people around you from any aerosols that you expel. Hospital staff wear masks in an operating room to protect patients from germs they may be carrying. For 5 years, I volunteered in various areas at Gilderland Elementary School, and I can tell you that most kids, including my own, do not cover their mouth and noses when they sneeze and cough. Wearing a mask will shorten the distance that spray can travel. This past weekend, Dr. Sally Goza, former president of the American Academy of Pediatrics, said about the Delta variant, "This is not last year's COVID. This one is worse, and our children are the ones that are going to be affected by it the most." One argument against children wearing masks is that it can emotionally traumatize them. I understand that, and I was worried about how it would affect my daughter going into 5th grade last year. But she and her friends adapted, persevered, and found a way to thrive. I think a child being admitted to the ICU and unable to breathe is far more traumatic than wearing a mask. Or how traumatic will it be for a child to bring COVID home to an immune-compromised family member, causing that person to have to go to the hospital? I would like more information from our school health offices regarding absences last year. I know it was the first year that I didn't get a letter from the school nurse about rampant strep throat. Would the district be able to provide parents with data showing the number of absences due to illness last year when masks and social distancing was practiced compared to previous years when these measures were not in place? I don't always agree with the decisions of the Board of Education, but I can appreciate the fact that you are volunteers willing to take on the monumental task of running a huge school district. And I sincerely hope that we see a return to respect, civility, and a willingness to listen in our community. Thank you for sacrificing time with your families to be here.
Thank you, Ms. Farrelly. Next, we have Dina Restivo.
Good evening. My name is Dina Restivo, class of '87, daughter graduated, class of 2010, waiting for a 3.5-year-old to enter the district soon. I am here to let you know that I will be looking for the seat that is vacant. I am requesting a physical and tangible copy of the state and the district's board's bylines and its special election rules, as I intend to be taking over the seat, and I would appreciate that, whether it is sent via mail or if you have a copy here that I can access. Anyone?
Ms. Restivo, do you have a mask? We're following all the school guidelines.
I've already informed that I have a medical condition.
Okay, no, I didn't know. I'm asking.
I'll tell everyone about it.
No, you don't need to.
Okay.
I was not aware.
There will be a lot of people that will have that, so when you see them, most likely they'll have that. Do you have the copies here?
Oh, for the open seat? I don't think we do. We can get it tomorrow at the district office.
And that will have all of the information in the bylaws
Yes.
for the special election process?
Well, we didn't decide if it's a special election yet or if it's going to be an appointment, but that will explain that what those two options are.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Okay, so you can pick up the copies and read through them, and we'll hear from the district soon about what option we're choosing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I have some public comments that were sent in email. Linda, you can go ahead and tell me when to stop with the timer. Thank you. This first one is from Caroline Hillen. It says, "Dear Board, please do not cave to anti-vax and anti-mask pressure. The only course of action to beat this public health crisis is to ensure that as many people as possible are vaccinated and that everyone remains masked. Science is on our side. Vaccination and masks save lives. This has been proven over the last year and is proven again daily. Science denying will result in needless illness and death. More and more young people are becoming seriously ill and also dying from the current Delta variant. My 35-year-old niece was in a coma for a month and in hospital for 4 months. She almost died several times during those 4 months, and doctors said it was a miracle that she lived. I had a close family friend die of COVID in February. I have relatives suffering with long-haul COVID symptoms. My 20-year-old daughter had COVID twice, 94 days apart, before the vaccination was available to her. Do not let anyone tell you that this virus is not serious or that vaccinations and masking are not necessary or don't help. Also, look to what's happening in Louisiana and Florida, among others. Hospitals without bed availability and ICUs and emergency rooms overflowing. Do not contribute to this happening here. Again, please listen to the science and don't let those pushing against vaccinations and masking make us all have to return to remote learning, countless unnecessary COVID cases, long-term illnesses, and deaths. Sincerely, Caroline Hillen. Okay, the next public comment says, as parents of students in schools throughout the district and residents of Guilderland, we express our dismay towards the treatment of the Guilderland School Board at the August 10th meeting. We certainly have diverse thoughts on all sorts of issues and beliefs, but we all agree that the harassment and menacing behavior by other community members toward the board was unjustified and wrong. This kind of intimidation and aggression is not what we want in our community. We commend the board members who persevered and continued to make hard decisions for our schools and our larger community despite the difficult circumstances they encountered. We support you and thank you for your selfless service. Sincerely, there's a list of names here: Denise Altschul, Sarah Baker, Hollis Baker, Kelly Berlin, Garrett Bissell, Heather Bissell, Saturnino Fernandez, Gretchen Gunther Collins, Jennifer Gula, Lindsay Jacob, Sony Jacob, Lydia Long, Bridget Kenrick, Kara Matarese, Chris Mirabella, Kimberly Mirabella, Nicole Nolan, Will Nolan, Sarah O'Brien, Jennifer Rose, Frank Russo, Harit Sam, Wendy Sam, Keith Smith, Tina Sodi, Alicia Dean Steinler, Jason Steinler, Leah 3, Ronnie 3, Gregory 3, Stephanie 3, Vanessa 3, Joe Timonis, Kelly Timonis, and Megan Wakeman. Okay, the next public comment is from Kara Baxter. It says, please mandate mask use and require vaccination for all who are eligible. Please continue to keep our children and community safe. Thank you, Karen Baxter. Public comment number 4 via email says, Dear Board of Education and Dr. Wiles, I'm writing regarding the lack of an acceptable remote option for the start of the 21-22 school year. My son will be entering 4th grade and therefore is ineligible for a COVID vaccine. My daughter will be entering 8th grade and is fully vaccinated. Currently, the only options for learning are to attend school in person or provide a letter of medical necessity for a full year remote option through BOCES. Neither option takes into account the reality of the current situation. COVID cases are on the rise due to the Delta variant. More alarmingly, more children are being affected by COVID, including increased cases, hospitalizations, and ICU admissions. We now know vaccinated individuals can transmit the disease. Common sense dictates that more rather than fewer safety measures be implemented, and yet, following guidance of the CDC and state and health local agencies, schools are opening as if things were closer to normal, when that is simply not the case. The full year election for BOCES does not take into account the likelihood that a vaccine will be made available to students under 12 years of age during the school year. Vaccination has always been sold as a game changer, a medical miracle that prevents severe illness and death. Why not just be a bit more patient when the vaccine is on the horizon for children under 12? In schools, distancing has been decreased to 3 feet. This allows for all students to fit in the school building. Conveniently, a remote option is no longer needed. As a family whose children were remote of all last year, it seems now as though the remote learning option was merely a convenient way to decrease the in-person population and make the 6 feet distancing work a way to follow the guidance, rather than a true concern for different levels of risk tolerance. Last year, a half-year commitment to remote option was understandable. The increased distancing required limiting the number of students in the building. What is the reason for a full year election this year when presumably there is now more room for everyone in school? Further, a full year election takes away the hope of a return to school and serves to further stigmatize and de-incentivize remote learners. de-incentivize remote learners. Clearly, the district has chosen to follow the guidance, all the while anticipating quarantines and even remote learning contingencies. It is selling safe schools and likely preparing for a different outcome. A remote option with a degree of flexibility would at least acknowledge the elephant in the room, vaccine eligibility for elementary-age children. I appreciate a layered approach. I believe masking is necessary and will be for some time to come. But honestly, the vaccine is the best layer available. It just isn't available to everyone yet. After a year and a half of careful choices and distancing, I am finding it incredibly difficult to allow my unvaccinated son into a building full of unvaccinated individuals. Frankly, this flies in the face of reason. Once he is vaccinated, barring vaccine-resistant strains, and that was from Kristen Smirtic. The next public comment comes from Denise Connolly. It says, please continue protecting all our children by requiring masks. Thank you, Denise Connolly. And public comment number 6. Thank you, Linda, for sending this to me. Just open this. Okay. Members of the board and fellow community members, my name is Caleb Abbasi, and I'm an 8th grade student at FMS. I was appalled by the animosity on display at the most recent board meeting. What should be a calm, thoughtful discourse on one of the most important topics of this school year has devolved into bickering and name-calling. I don't know about you, but I am certain this type of behavior would not be permitted in a classroom. When grown adults act like that, what kind of example are you setting for your children? What we must do is be polite and state facts supported by valid scientific studies, not opinions fueled by partisan disinformation. The facts are as follows. The Delta variant accounts for the vast majority of cases in this country, and it is much more deadly and transmissible than the original strain of COVID. The best methods to mitigate the virus are for everyone to wear masks, which drastically lowers the chance of transmitting and contracting COVID-19, and to get vaccinated, which significantly decreases the likelihood that contracting the Delta variant will result in hospitalization or serious illness. Children aged 11 or under are not currently eligible for vaccination, and these basic precautions for everyone are being politicized. This is not and should not be a political issue. It is simply science that is continually tested by our nation's best doctors and researchers. The answer is clear. We must not endanger students for selfish reasons. Now more than ever, COVID precautions are absolutely necessary. Everyone must work together in order to beat COVID, whether that means masking up and social distancing or getting the vaccine. Just because many people are wearing masks and getting vaccinated, others cannot choose to blow off safety protocols and endanger everyone else, especially children. If you are not following protocols, you are holding back and endangering others because of your own ignorance and selfishness. Now is the time to show our ability to work together and overcome this giant hurdle that stands in our path. I'd like to thank the school board and Dr. Wiles for mandating masks throughout the district. Your leadership is invaluable in times like these. Sincerely, Caleb Abbasi. And let's see, public comment number, I don't know why I don't see number 7, I see number 8.
Well,
Oh, there was no 7.
I probably messed up.
Oh, okay, no, that's fine. Okay, so the next public comment is from Tim Burke. GCSD. When we bought our house here in Gilderland, we were surprised by the amount of taxes we paid. I started attending school board meetings and volunteering for committees. With over a decade of working with mentally ill juveniles and adjudicated youth, we felt we had some expertise. After countless board meetings and letters to the editor, we became involved in the private school our son was attending and stopped attending meetings. Having strong opinions ruffled feathers and was not welcomed by school administrators or many board members. Despite being a thorn in their side, no school administrator or board member was ever intentionally unkind to us. Rather, we saw professionals behaving professionally. We simply disagreed, and we did so as politely as we could. The behavior I saw last week from far too many was not acceptable. I implore you tonight to be polite and be courteous. Shouting and name-calling brings attention not to your opinion, but your behavior. Please represent yourselves and your families as you would want your children to. And that is from Tim Burke. Are those all the public comments, Linda? Okay, thank you. So we actually we completed all the public comments within the 30 minutes. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions about some of the comments that were read. Dr. Wells, do you know if anybody else regarding the 5th grade model, has anyone else come upset or complained or worried?
Not to me personally, but I don't know if Dr. Lockwood has heard any additional comments or questions.
Okay. And from what I understand, there was a letter that was sent out to 5th grade parents for GES that explained it after. I mean, it sounds like there was maybe not some communication before, but after there was a letter sent out.
The letter, the class assignments were posted to the portal, and then the letter went out. It probably should have been the letter and then the portal at the very least.
Okay. And then I just had a couple other comments. One, I know we had read a lot last week, heard a lot last week about masks, and a little bit more this week. But I think that decision is now is out of our hands. We can continue moving on, making educational decisions. And then in terms of the FDA approval and choice with with the vaccines, students who are they're still being established, right, for the sports. There hasn't been anything concrete sent out yet.
So we have not created any policy around vaccinations or testing for our athletes yet. We were reviewing the information that is with the CDC, which is quite convoluted, and we also reviewed the guidance that came from Elizabeth Whalen, who's the executive director of the Albany County Department of Health, who indicated that high-risk sports should be canceled, or other activities should be canceled or held remotely if everyone is not vaccinated. We have not adopted that at this point. We are at this point trying to gather some information about the percentage of students we have who are vaccinated, and also gathering consent for regular screening testing. But at this point, we're just gathering the information. We have a small team tomorrow meeting to talk about what the screening testing could look like if we go down that road. But we don't at this time know what the scope of the concern is. We also were very cognizant of the fact that we heard from our new governor today, who's going to be releasing some guidance later in the week that could have the force of not guidance, but rather directive. And so we need to be ready to respond to that as well. But right now, we are in the data gathering stage.
Okay, thank you. And then last, I just had one comment. Ms. Teffarelli brought up the absences piece and tracking. I think last year I heard from some families regarding absences, but I think that was more of an issue because there was the hybrid. So there were students who were, at home and then wanting to be in person, et cetera, back and forth. But maybe this year, it sounds like it'll be a little bit easier to track because they're not going to should be in school every day.
To that point, Mary Swaggerman, who's our head nurse based at Gilmore Elementary School, I don't have the data in front of me. However, she has noted, she's a member of our reopening/recovery planning team, that the number of absences due to flu, strep, stomach bugs, the kinds of things that we typically see were not evident last year. However, we had lots of absences around quarantining or being the sibling of a symptomatic child. So we had different kinds of absences, but not the typical absences our elementary school nurses would see. I don't have the numbers though.
Okay. All right, so we can move on then to, go ahead, Gloria.
I just wanted to say a word about Mr. Horalchuk, who spoke. He had written to all of us, and he also asked if anybody would like to meet with him. I did meet with him, just so everybody knows. We talked about his concerns, and I have to say I did agree with many of them. And I went ahead and met with Alan Lockwood, principal. We talked things through. I think he understands what my concerns were. He assured me that I would be kept in the loop during the year, and I'm sure parents will, and that there is some things in place regarding evaluating what's going on that was not clear in the letter. So I think that there were some things that had to be cleared up. But I did share very much the concerns that Mr. Horalchuk.
I I would like to chime in. I know we're not supposed to give our opinion right now, but.
Oh, well, we can talk before we move on to the next agenda.
Yeah, I actually agree with Mr. Harlechek, and I don't like the way that things went down. I feel like it wasn't transparent. I also wouldn't support that model. I'm concerned about it. I think that's one of the things that makes FMS so difficult for our kids when they first start FMS, and I'm opposed to starting it early. If I had any say in it whatsoever, I would have voted against it. I'm embarrassed that things took place this way. I'm just going to be straight with you. It's not a personal attack on Principal Lockwood, but I feel like that there was a lack of communication and transparency.
I would agree with that, of having talked it through and listening to the teachers out there. I mean, having been a team teacher at the middle school, my immediate reaction was no, it belongs at the middle school. But I'd be open, because I've been out of the classroom over 10 years and things change. But I would have been open to thinking about that. But I agree with you in terms of the way it was done and the way we found out about it was not a very good way.
I mean, it sounds like, oh, go ahead, Nate.
I just want to speak as a parent of a fifth grader at GES. I do support the model. I just want to chime in because I don't like it. So there's a vote on the other side. But I do agree with not handled properly.
It sounds like the communication could have been better, but I also think a lot of times in hindsight, it's easy to say that, and I don't want, it to become the board micromanaging decisions made, but it sounds like the communication piece could have been better, but that's all I have to say about that. Any other comments before we move on?
Well, I didn't see the public comments. Linda, I don't know if can you forward them from the Abasi student?
Yeah, they came in I think at the very beginning.
The last two.
Yeah, so they'll be posted, but we can forward them.
That one in particular, if you could forward to me, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to the next agenda item, which is the consent agenda. This includes the minutes of the August 10th, 2021 meeting and the personnel agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Nate, second Rebecca. Any questions or comments about this? All in favor? It passes 7-0.
Before we go on, I'm just so pleased to announce that the new Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is actually among us this evening, Mr. Matthew Pinchinot. So congratulations, Matt, on your appointment. And if you would be so kind, you might as well get used to the podium. If you wouldn't mind going up and just saying a couple words. We're so happy to have you here tonight.
First and foremost, I want to say thank you for having me. Thank you, board, and everyone who was part of the interview process, for my colleagues, for my family and friends who supported me and encouraged me to apply in the first place. I'm grateful to you. I'm grateful to God for allowing me to be here, and I'm very, very excited to start this work. As I've gone through this past week, the biggest thing that's been on my mind was, this doesn't feel quite real. And today, right now, it's starting to feel very real.
That was the plan then.
Right. I'm grateful for it. And I am a firm believer in this district. And to all the parents and community members who are here, I want to thank you for entrusting with me, your students, your children, the most precious resource that we have in this district. It has been one of the greatest honors of my life to have been a teacher in this district for the past 4 years, to kind of mirror the path of our students. I came in as a freshman, some cold feet, and wanted to just get involved as much as I could. And last year, finishing out my senior year in pandemic year was certainly one for the ages. And moving on to this, I stand on the shoulders of giants, excited to support our students, excited to support the work that is already underway. And it is my firm belief that the mission of this committee, the mission of this position, the emphasis on diversity, comes from our national creed, E pluribus unum, and that out of many we are one. And when we are all privileged, and when we are all recognized for our value that we bring to the table, we are greater than the sum of our parts. So as a child of 2 Haitian immigrants who I know are extremely proud on today, I look forward to continuing to work, and I believe that we're going to have success because I believe in this community and I believe in each of you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Matt, for sharing that. Your shoes are going to be hard to fill in the classroom, but I'm so excited that you're going to be here in Guildville and still in a different role. So congratulations. Next on the agenda, we have superintendent information. Dr. Wiles?
So just a couple words about our reopening of school plan. Our communications office posted it's a draft reopening plan to the website yesterday afternoon. If you're looking for it, it's actually in the bottom banner. There's a news story that says District Post Draft Reopening Plan. Tomorrow morning, we will be sending out an SNN to all of our families announcing that on Monday, September 30th, we'll be hosting a virtual live stream Q&A session to give our family and communities an opportunity to ask questions about our plan. I will add this, that earlier today, our new governor spoke and promised us additional guidance from the Department of Health. So I'm glad we said it was a draft plan because it very well might change before Monday. But I just want to invite everyone to take a look at the plan. There'll be a place to submit questions for us to respond to on Monday. We'll have a panel to address the questions and concerns that are on everyone's mind. I just want to frame our reopening plan a little bit because in light of some of the public comment and some of the questions about being in school. And I want to underscore that from the CDC guidance and from the American Academy of Pediatricians, they placed at the very top priority of their work getting all school students back in school. That the risks associated with students being out of school were actually greater than having students in school. And that's the fundamental reason for the change from 6 feet to 3 feet in the physical distancing piece. So we are able to bring back essentially all of our students in our classrooms in the buildings where they are supposed to be, 5th grade to the elementary, 8th grade at the middle, and we can have our 7th through 12th grade students come to school every day precisely because of that 3-foot physical distancing change. And in fact, the guidance says, if possible. So our plan is really premised around that notion of having all of our students in school and keeping them as safe as we possibly can. So almost all of our operations are premised on the understanding that school will look like it used to. We'll have all our programs, we'll have all of our services, we have all our extracurricular activities, we have all of our athletics, which is a tremendous journey to have challenged from 1 year ago today, when we had dispersed students, no extracurricular activities, many programs not happening. So while I know we are not 100% back to normal, we are so much further along than we were a year ago, which is why it's so important for us to make sure we have follow all of the safety and health protocols or cleaning protocols, and that's what's included in our plan. So I welcome everyone to join us next Monday night.
I just wanted one more question, Dr. Wells, just to reiterate. So you said there will be an SNN going out about this virtual live Q&A, and then people can submit questions in that email, the information about that? Okay. Any questions on that?
Well, I have a question kind of about the remote option. You and I have spoken, I've been pretty outspoken about my feelings that it was too much to ask parents to commit to 1 year. I feel pretty strongly about that. I feel like we perhaps put the interests of the BOCES or the district and what's easier above what's best for the students. So that being said, is this a done deal? Is there any flexibility? Will there be any flexibility? Because if this does get worse, which I hope it doesn't, and I hope I'm wrong, and I hope we stay at 3 feet, but if we get to the point where we gotta do 6 feet, what the heck are we gonna do? And will we have a remote option for BOCES?
So, I mean, if things get terrible, and we had to close buildings and wings of buildings and entire buildings on and off last year. We pivoted to remote instruction done by our own teachers.
Okay.
should we descend to that level of crisis, and I literally pray we do not, we would use our own staff in order to do this. So under the current model, we don't have enough staff to run a school district with everybody, almost everybody inside, in person, and a parallel school for everyone remote. And to offer that widespread remote offering for something other than medical reasons really goes against guidance point number 1 from the CDC and the AAP, which is we want our students in school. Many may disagree with that, but that is our overarching goal, is to get kids in school. Should the guidance change somewhere down the road to 6 feet, we will be shuffling the deck. We can't host all of our students all day, every day with 6 feet.
And I'm not disagreeing. I think getting the kids back in school in person is the best idea, obviously. But I'm concerned that I don't think we have a plan B, and I feel like we didn't take into account that some kids, you know, are going to be vaccinated halfway through the year, and then will be stuck in either remote or stuck in person and risking themselves. We're also not taking into account the folks that they live with. I feel like it was very insensitive. Also, there was no information that went out about the remote option for both these. Like, there were no details. It was like, you haven't, you know, your option expires at this hour on Monday. I think it was a disservice. I don't like the way it was done at all.
Like, there's not enough faculty and staff to do a in-school and like, this doesn't make any sense.
So if it's half-year option, I don't see why we couldn't have made it a half-year. I agree, quarterly is crazy, but half-year option, I think we should have worked harder to come up with something. I don't think that we did.
Well, it just sounds like they did a bunch of things last year and learned lessons, and none of us are in the building working. So I get it. I mean, there's no like perfect solution to any of this. There's going to be, you know, drawbacks to all of the possible solutions. I just don't see how that would be feasible, and it becomes like an entire mess. Like, let the teachers who, you know, were hired in Guilderland to work in Guilderland with our students who are here in person, and if students choose to do the option of remote, you know, using BOCES, which they're of course they're, you know, entitled to do that, then let them do that.
But that's what I'm saying. We made them choose for a whole year, even though they may have only needed it for half a year.
Right, but
I think we put our interest in what's easiest above.
Well, it's also like it's also reasonable too. Like, we can't accommodate every single request that we get. It's just not feasible.
We can't sit here and be like, oh, it's so important for kids to be, you know, back in the classroom. That's our number one goal. And then at the same time say, oh, but sorry, if we're concerned about your health, we're going to make you stick to this for a whole year.
Well, I mean, this is a pandemic.
Yeah, it is a pandemic, and we've known about it now. We're on year 2.
Right.
We should have planned better.
But
I really feel like we should have planned better.
as far as I know, we have no control over what BOCES does. It doesn't do.
Aren't we?
They're the remote option.
So they plan the model, and the year commitment is based on the reality that they need to staff the program and fund the program and structure the program based on the number of students. So I don't think they could do a half year and then do another half year. They're working with dozens and dozens of districts. It's not just the 24 in the capital. They're serving.
You've been saying that for months, and I
Yeah,
really.
so it's logistical nightmare, which is one of the reasons why they've struggled to get information out. It's been the chicken or the egg. So tell us how many students you have who want to be remote. Well, tell us what the program is going to look like. Well, we can't tell you what the program is going to look like until we know how many students we have. Very, very complex. But I will say this, Blanca. Last year we had a half-year rule. We broke it left and right. If we had a student who signed up for remote, and in October, a parent called and said, "This is a disaster for my child. Can he or she come back?" We said yes. And vice versa, if we had someone in school and something changed in their family circumstances and they didn't feel safe, can we go remote? We said yes. And I can't imagine we wouldn't do the same.
I think it's good for people to hear that flexibility.
I agree, especially since the vaccines might
be a big deal?
So we're just not going to agree. My opinion is pretty, I'm stuck with it. I feel like we could have tried harder. And that it was a lot to ask the folks to make that decision, commit to it for a year, and do so without really knowing what both these programs are going to look like. The state run.
Any other comments? Okay, moving on to school business management action next. Neil?
Thank you, Dr. Rivera. First item this evening is a resolution to approve agreements with Kids Corner Child Care Learning Center and St. Madeleine Sophie School for universal pre-K services for the 2021-22 school year, pending attorney review.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the universal pre-K agreements? Blanca, second Kelly. Okay, any comments or questions? Go ahead, Kelly.
That's the St. Madeleine Sophie School. I know there was some email questions. I know it didn't make public comment. I don't know how to sum them up, but kind of about the religious aspect of the school and maybe people being uncomfortable with that. I know Blanca might be able to speak to that. She brought some issues up too with that. And the second one I had, as I looked through it, kind of just my own question. Are the teachers that are doing it, are they who would they be employees of? The St. Madeleine School or Kids Corner or us? And are they in the GTA at all? And what kind of qualifications do they? I kind of reading it said they need to be, I lost the verbiage in here, so I can't quite highlight, but certified, near state certified, or going to be there on a track to do it within 2 years or 5 years or whatever. Can you give us a little bit of background of the new way the program will go?
Sure. I will say we're learning this along with everybody else. So this was a surprise when we got our state aid run back when the budget was passed. It was an allocation for all school districts to fund a universal pre-K program. So we've been on the scramble ourselves to understand this, and also providers who haven't participated in the program as well. So it's been a learning curve for everybody involved. In terms of the religious aspects of St. Madeleine Sophie School, they're fully cognizant of separation of church and state. That discussion hasn't occurred. And during the school day, when children will be participating in the universal pre-K program, there will not be any religious instruction. If parents opt into what we call wraparound services, other services before and after school, that would be the time for that. But during the pre-K program, there will be no denominational or religious instruction occurring at that time.
On that thought, before I forget, I need to interrupt you, but if they got selected for it, would they have a choice to go to Kids Corner or Madeleine Sophie?
They have the
Like, there may not be religious things taught, but there's still going to be, crosses on the walls and like religious things and pamphlets and things like that.
That's what I brought up too, Kelly. Because you mentioned the discussion, I brought the same thing up, and that's what I was told, is that they could pick between.
Would they make it? It would be a choice.
It would be a choice.
Okay,
You would
okay.
apply to one of them.
I see.
Or you have a choice to apply to which one
Sorry,
you
to
might apply
interrupt
to.
or recover something. Okay, that's good.
Your second question?
Are the teachers part of like our GE?
No, they're not district employees. They're employed by the pre-K providers themselves. So they would hire their staff. They have to be credentialed in terms of early childhood education. So there are some parameters around the certification that for the staff that they have to employ to provide the program. They hire all their staffing. So if there's other needs for English as a new language or students with disabilities, they would hire those staff as well. So we're separated in terms of the staffing. They will employ their own staff, provide their own staff, hire their own staff. We're more of a conduit for the funds in program oversight in a large sense.
It's a big program. It's a lot to put on them. They're not used to it, especially with students with IPs and things like that.
It's not as uncommon as you might think, because children have those disabilities at young ages as well. So both providers have had experience with children with both disabilities and multiple languages.
And they have to adhere to the programming that state programming for, I don't know what kind of state program there are for pre-K as far as.
There are state regulations that dictate in some detail about what the expectations are, and they would need to follow them.
I just have a question about the lottery, and I know, well, you all know I sent emails. I sent an email today with, because I've been getting a lot of questions about the pre-K, and I don't know if Dr. Wells, you want me to mention the questions, or if you just, I don't know if you remember.
You're welcome to remind them.
Okay.
Failing memory.
Well, there was a bunch. These are just, I'm being asked by a lot of parents who have kids at that grade, so I'm just, communicating, asking about the lottery placement for enrolling students in terms of students who are already enrolled to attend Kids Corner and St. Mads and versus ones who have not.
So Neil and I were on a call with the State Education Department one day last week trying to have a clear understanding on how that piece will work, because we were awarded the funding in most cases long after these children were already enrolled in the programs. So for this year, students who are currently enrolled in those 4-year-old programs at St. Mads and Kids Corner will be grandfathered in. And then we would lottery any additional available seats.
Okay, and then the choice you guys just mentioned, so you don't need to answer that again. And then also, so the question was, what sort of medical documentation will we need to complete prior to school starting? Will there be a grace period since we're so close to starting school?
The grace period is a big yes. The State Education Department understands that we're doing this at the last minute. They understand that, typically we would be doing registration in March, and we didn't get funding or awarded funding until April. So families will have some time. They'll have the typical documentation that they'll need to provide if they're selected in the lottery, which would include proof of residency in Guilderland, and then an immunization record, I think would be the two main things.
And then the last question I had was, when and how do you expect this info will be disseminated to families who are waiting to hear?
So if you noticed, when we asked you to approve the contract, it was pending attorney review on both parties. So we're still tweaking a little language here and there with the parties. As soon as we have signed contracts, we will reach out to, put something on our website, but we'll also reach out directly to the families who have contacted us. We've had many who have reached out. We'll send them it's a brief application that will be used for the available slots for the lottery, and then we'll go from there. And we'll try to get it done as quickly as we possibly can.
So what we're voting on is like a provisional agreement, and after it's all approved, can you send us the contracts that are,
Yes.
I guess if they're changed?
Any different from this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
By the time we sign, they will reflect the language that is
Okay.
appropriate.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
How many children did this
We have funding for 116 spots, and St. Madeline has capacity for 40. I believe Kids Corner has capacity for as much as 80, give or take. So that would be our entire allotment if those are all filled. But we only have the 116 slots. I know we have far more than 116 4-year-olds in Guilderland, but that's what our funding is at this point.
And the contracts say maximum of 20 children per classroom?
Yes.
And 2 classrooms at SMS?
Yes.
Roughly 4?
Yes.
And then also for the next year, it would be, everybody would be entered in the lottery earlier on.
It's my understanding that we would need to lottery subsequent. We did have a conversation with state ed about, well, what about the 3-year-olds who are currently in the pipeline who are expecting? I feel like at some point it needs to be a lottery and not a grandfathering. Otherwise, because there'll always be 3-year-olds in the pipeline. So, yes, eventually it'll be a lottery.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor? Aye, passes 7-0.
Next we have a resolution to eradicate poison ivy on the athletic fields and playgrounds at Dillon High School, Brunswick Middle School, Dillon Elementary, Linwood, Westmere,
can I have a motion to approve the emergency pesticide application? Gloria, second Nate. Any questions? Comments? All in favor?
Well, did anybody find out about this the hard way? Did they get poison ivy or?
I'm not sure about that, but this is not atypical. This is pretty much what happens annually.
Okay.
We do have areas that we tend to sprout poison ivy. So we are observant of that, recognize it when it happens, and bring it to the board so we can do that pesticide application. This is typically around this time that it's most evident.
Gotcha, thanks.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Next, we have resolution, and basically the resolution declares that due to the shortage of available bus drivers locally and statewide, and to assist the district in providing timely transportation service to all students, it's hereby recommended to approve the emergency contract transportation service agreements with Northland Transportation Services and Amazing Grace Transportation for the period September 9th, 2021 to October 9th, 2021.
Can I have a motion to approve the contracted transportation service? Rebecca, second Judy. And, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, how come it's only 4 months?
That's all we're allowed to do by law. So if we end up in a situation where, and we've done this already, we've done 2 competitive bids for private transportation services, which we routinely have done in the past as well. We have a certain number of runs that are contracted out. But in this case, we had little to no response because private carriers are facing the same issues that school districts are in terms of availability of drivers, I should say lack of availability of drivers. So we were not able to outsource many of those runs that we had in the past. Circumstances have changed with regard to these 2 vendors. They do feel they can provide some services to us now. They weren't able to do that a few weeks ago. So they approached us about, we did some reaching out and had a conversation. A couple of vendors are saying that we can do some transportation on a more limited basis, not to the extent that they've done in the past. So what the state law allows is for us to enter into an emergency contract basis, but for no more than 30 days. That will allow us the time to do the bidding, and we'll be back to a typical bid environment for those runs.
And do we, with the addition of this, will we have enough buses and bus drivers?
We have enough buses, not enough drivers still. So this still puts us, I think today, about 5 short of what we would need to operate on a daily basis.
Along with everybody else in the world, apparently.
Yes, everybody's in the same situation. We've tried working with other area schools. We're able to co-join on a run with Voorheesville, but all schools are facing the same situation. All private contractors are facing the same situation. So it's an industry-wide problem. So in this instance, when we didn't have enough, sometimes we use private contractors. That's no longer a resource for us because they don't have the drivers either. So we're back to trying to do this with our staff. So that's creating the need to have more of our staff than typical. And we do have some drivers. We've got 4 or 5 in training. Those are counted into, we're still short after that, but we've been able to attract a few, but not enough. So on any given day, we may have to have some of our office staff who are alternate bus drivers and dispatchers, transportation supervisors, IT trainer, mechanics, out on the road doing transportation.
You should train the board.
Don't train me.
We want to make it mandatory and then.
Go ahead.
Do we have any idea how many folks are opting out of transportation yet? You know what I mean? Because we had to all do the school bus transportation for a while.
Yeah, I don't know what the current number is. It was relatively low.
Of people opting out?
Opting out.
Okay.
But, you know, the point of that too is it might save in some areas. We still have the same amount of geography to cover, more or less. So if we lose, you know, 2 or 3 students don't ride bus because we have to go from one endpoint to the other, this is just taking less time to do the route. That might create a little advantage because we might be able to add on 2 or 3 streets and kind of piecemeal it that way. But we still have to remember we got to cover basically the same geography. It's just spread out.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Passes 7-0. Thank you, Neil. I know that we don't have anything else on the agenda. I just want to bring up again about the board place, the position that we have open, because Ben was, I think, he was a liaison to Westmere. So Nate, you're the backup?
High school.
Oh, he was high
I
school.
am back to that.
He was back to the high school, so you can be the liaison to the high school until we replace that position. And I'm happy to step in and to fill Ben's role on the policy committee until we have a new person.
I think that would be great.
And I don't remember what else Ben was on.
DI.
Yes.
Yeah, DEI.
And so who was already on there? Kelly, Gloria, and myself.
And,
I'll do it.
And Barbara,
Oh, and Barbara, so we already,
you're like, you're ex officio.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're
Sorry.
staying, you count them.
Yes, I don't count, right. So you guys, and then Barb, and then Blanca, do you want to?
I'll do it if needed, if not, it's fine.
I mean, maybe at least until we have a new board member,
Okay.
and then we can kind of reshuffle around if we need to. Okay. I also, in the interest of not having a quorum, and I'm worried about, like, it's too long to wait, obviously, until May, so I personally think we should move forward with the process and decide if we're going to have an election, or this is just my opinion, you don't have to agree with me, or appointment, and then, so we can put that out there, and so we can start, seeing who's interested. And I should add that Barb is not here tonight, but she wanted me to say that Luciana, who was on the board before, was interested in also being in that position. But any thoughts about that replacement
I
process?
think we should do what's cheaper and faster.
I like the
than what we've
process.
done before.
I like cheaper.
I like what we did when Rebecca came on, and Blanca was on that as well, where we put out the word, and we had 5 or 6 candidates at that time. It's kind of interesting that so we picked Rebecca, but you came back and Ben got elected kind of on your own, but nobody else from that. Ben did too.
Ben did.
Right, but nobody else from that particular one. There was still 3 or 4 other people that had shown interest for the appointment but didn't run yet, which was interesting, but maybe we can get a good group of people, and Luciano wants to come in and do that as well, and try to get back on the board again. He very well might be appointed or picked as.
And we have somebody, tonight say they're interested as well, so there's at least 2 people.
There's broader interest, I think, so I think we should have that interview process.
Or you would have a file with those letters and all that stuff, right? Linda?
Right, we
So
have something to write a
Pull all
letter.
that out and.
So it would be an announcement going out. I don't remember even who's the person resigning since I've been on here. The announcement goes out, and then we ask for letters of interest, and then set a kind of, be the candidate night. And do we have like
You have a moderator ask the questions.
Right, but basically I'm trying to say is how long do we have that window open of when we have people interested in? It's a short window.
Yeah, I was gonna say, didn't we have like a couple days?
I thought it was like a couple weeks.
Yeah, I don't know.
Say 2 weeks.
Why don't we wait around?
Yeah. But I think, if we decide tonight, we can go ahead and do that, or, because we won't meet until after school starts, correct? That's why our next meeting is not until September.
14th.
Yeah, so it won't be until school starts, which I'm just gonna guess there's gonna be other things we're gonna be discussing too.
I would think if we all agree that that's the process we want to follow, it's really laid out pretty well.
I mean, first, does anybody oppose, making that decision at all tonight? Okay, so I'm in favor of using the appointment process, which we've used in the past, and doing the Q&A with the group. Okay, so we've come to a decision.
Because is a Q&A, can we do that at a scheduled board meeting, or is it a separate night?
We usually do like a separate night, and
I
it's
was
kind of like.
thinking that 14th might be a little quick to turn around, but yeah, okay, I just wanted
I
to.
think we had a moderator, like,
Okay.
we had a student just ask the questions.
Yeah, just kind of like a regular meet the candidate night before the
Okay.
COVID, when,
Yeah.
even during the election where people came and they sat at the table, and then we had questions, and then we used the scoring system, and I think we did it that night, and then, selected the board member.
I wasn't clear if that.
We haven't even started the school year yet, I just don't wanna wait and then it becomes really difficult to schedule that, and, it seems like it would be a nice time to make that announcement sooner than later. Yeah.
I agree.
I think we put a notice out in the Alpha Enterprise maybe, and give a deadline, and also advertise on the webpage.
I can write some things for the enterprise. as a way
Like a
to-
deadline, we could talk about it.
Yeah.
Or fix our schedule, like offline, we could figure it out.
Yeah. We can use what language we've used in the past for announcement, and then, we can put something out as a board. I'll check with Barb, see if she's okay with that, and just put it from a board as a letter to the editor, kind of announcing that. All right, so, any other comments or questions or board sharing?
Let's do your board evaluation.
Okay, so I'll have a motion to adjourn. Nate, second Rebecca, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes 7-0. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.